Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clarke. He joins me. Thank you for being with me, Sheriff.
My pleasure, Poppy.
First, I want everyone to listen to part of what President Obama said this week, responding to the attacks on these two police officers.
There was no excuse for criminal acts, and whoever fired those shots shouldn't detract from the issue. They're criminals. They need to be arrested. And then what we need to do is to make sure that like-minded, good-spirited people on both sides, law enforcement who have a terrifically tough job, and people who understandably don't want to be stopped and harassed just because of their race, that we're able to work together to try to come up with some good answers.
Attorney General Eric Holder also coming out this week after those officers were shot, calling it heinous, calling it disgusting and cowardly. Sheriff, you say those responses aren't enough. Why?
Well, there are mixed messages. There's a very convoluted message from the president. On one hand, he talks about the seriousness of the offense. Where was he when he made that statement, by the way? Because his initial reaction to the shooting of two of St. Louis's finest was through a tweet, and I thought that was highly insensitive. But anyway, then he drags in at the end this that people don't want to be stopped by the police because of their race. And I'm trying to figure out how that fits in with what happened with the shooting of two of St. Louis's finest. Eric Holder, on the other hand, came out with a statement yesterday or the day before and said that they were damn punks, whoever shot the police. And I was wondering why he didn't have that sort of statement about Mike Brown, who just held up a strong-arm robbery anyway, where he bullied a convenience store clerk and stole items and then went and tried to disarm a law enforcement officer. He didn't have those words for that action.
So you asked where those comments were made. The president made those comments on Jimmy Kimmel Live on that program. I have to ask you.
Totally inappropriate. Totally inappropriate venue.
What, he shouldn't have, I mean, he shouldn't have addressed it on that program at all when he was asked?
Look, that's an entertainment and a semi-comedy program. That's not appropriate. I don't know why. When he talked about Mike Brown, he had a suit on and he was in either the White House press room or he was in the East Room when he made that comment, but he couldn't put on a suit on after two of St. Louis's finest were shot and hit, took sniper fire, and deliver his concerns about that incident then. I just, you know, the optics are horrible, especially for law enforcement officers who are looking at this. And he goes on an entertainment and a comedy program. I like Jimmy Kimmel, but it's not the type of venue that this sort of thing should be talked about.
So you would have liked to see something more formal. Understood. Let me ask you this. Police shot in the line of duty across this country rose more than 50% in 2014. That's according to the December report from the National Law Enforcement Officer Fatality Report. I'm wondering if your officers there in Milwaukee, officers that you know across the country, are scared when they see numbers like that.
Well, not scared, but hypervigilance. The hypervigilance goes up, and there's a tipping point. You know, you can't keep cops in a state of hypervigilance for a long period of time before it starts to have a physical and emotional effect. But that's what we have to do to stay alive. But that piece of data, you know, in the face of this lie, this false narrative about the deadly use of force by law enforcement officers against young black males, you know, let's have some balance in this discussion. The environment that a law enforcement officer has to work in is extremely dangerous. We can have these discussions about both of these incidents, but you know, this is a one-sided argument right now. It's a false narrative that cops use an inordinate amount of deadly force against young black males.
Sheriff, before I let you go, I do want to ask you this. The DOJ report had two main points. The first point was that the shooting of by Officer Darren Wilson of Mike Brown was a justifiable use of force. And it also found that the hands up, you know, don't shoot, did not happen in that situation. Secondly, it found systematic racism among some in the Ferguson Police Department. The president addressed both in those comments to Jimmy Kimmel. Do you believe that both should be addressed?
I believe that the report compiled by Eric Holder was not objective. One of the things he also should have pointed out in there is that black males have a disproportionate involvement in crime and violent crime, and that black citizens all across the United States are disproportionately victimized as well at the hands of other blacks. I think that needs to be put in there, and we can have this discussion about both.
Sheriff David Clarke, good to have you on the program. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Poppy.